Welcome back. It is the Trust Your Gut podcast. I'm Erin Trent Johnson here with Dr. A. Antonio Aragona, Ayurvedic doctor. And we are here for the July edition of Trust Your Gut. Dr. A, how are you?
I am great. It's July, it's summer, it's vibrant out there, and just yeah, I'm good. I'm just enjoying each moment, having my cup of chai for my morning treat.
Yes, yes. I will join you. And yes, it is vibrant, it is bright, it's hot. It is
It
hot.
is supposed to be in the 90s today. And so this is all interesting to see the weather patterns if we're watching globally, you know, like all this kind of what we're about to, dive into relates to like what we're seeing in the climate issues. New York just had this massive flooding. It was like really like I was like astounded. And,
Mhm.
it's almost similar to like what we had in 2021 in Philly. Then we're having these random increased frequencies of, flash flood warning, tornado watches. Like this, and it's this summer
Almost every
morning.
day.
This summer is mostly the most intense of many years. So,
I think that's
it's like
right.
nature and what's going on with nature, and then how do we navigate nature when the weather is kind of doing what it's doing as part of our daily self-practice. We can tie into that.
Yes. Well, I'm excited to continue this series on our daily rituals and what's informing them. So let's begin.
So we'll start with this one particular quote from Charaka. And 'cause we love Charaka, he's like the lead uh, Ayurvedic physician and Vaidya, and the knower of all things of Ayurveda and life and universality and things like that. And so the quote for today is Sarvada Sarvabhavanam Samanyam Vriddhi Karanam Hrasa Hetu Visheshacha Pravritir Ubhayasatu. And so basically what that shloka is referring to is, generic concomitants is what increases and the reduction is what is the opposite. And so in layman's terms, it's like increases like and opposites cure. This is what is commonly said in New Age Ayurveda. It's a little bit more specific than that, but that's the general ballpark just to kind of get an idea like what we're talking about. Like increases like an opposites cure, or the reduction is the medicine. And so how does this tie into, what we've been talking about? This is segment 3 on Dinacharya and daily practices. So to kind of imply what we're going to extract from this shloka and apply it to like the context of like what's the daily practice. And so Ayurveda has basically established, what the daily practice is, which is like dinacharya, which is like this regimented practice or routine that is done per day in honor of the day. And there's a lot of ways we can think about it. One way we can think about the daily practice is that, some people go to church on Sunday, some people go to church every day. Like church, we can use the words church or temple or things like that, or sacred space, every day that we touchstone. And so if we are an embodiment of the divine, and we're going through each day as the divine, and each day is divine because it's created by divine, so it's divine working within divine, and we're moving through time and space in this construct and this concept of, daily practice. The offering is to ourselves first and foremost, right? And so in traditional Hindu practices, for example, when you're going to do a puja or an offering or a ritual, it's a puja. There are specific deities that are present, and there's specific elements that are present from the earth, the water, the fire, the space. All the 5 elements are present in a physical form to manifest these kind of things. And we're doing this daily practice of adorning the deity. We're bathing the deity. We're rinsing it with water. We're rinsing it with milk. We're putting like honey on it. Then we're bathing it. We're dressing it, and then we're putting like certain like powders on it to give it color, like kumkum on the forehead. It's like when we're waking up, we're setting the tone and stage and intention for what the day is going to look like. But to really align with the day, we have to understand, 150,000 years ago, we would rise with the sun and set with the sun. the circadian rhythm, from the Western concept is, it's woven in there. Ayurveda doesn't speak of the circadian rhythm in the same way as, it's like, yeah, dinacharya. You wake up, you're naturally tired by the end of the day if you get up early. So if you're following the cycle of the sun rising and setting, and that will sort of change throughout the seasons changing, then of course there's going to be this natural inclination that the body's intelligence will know, like, it's the sun's about to rise, so I wake up and then I get the day going with the responsibilities and duties and things that I have to do for self-care and home care and family care and communal care. And then the day, the sun is setting, winding down with the light dinner, and then kind of, yeah, so if we're just kind of looking at that basic model and extracting even further, ah, what is happening in each day? So what should we be doing? And, in the past couple of sessions we've had here, talking about the dinacharya, this would be a basic layout, sort of re-summarizing and also adding in more clarification of the points that are meant as far as dinacharya. And so,
Hmm.
and this also, sort of as a disclaimer, applies to the average person that has the average capacity to follow this kind of cycle of the day. Because some people that are night workers, shift workers, things like that, they can't. They're going to be in a different part of the dinacharya. There are things that can be done to still remediate to some degree, but it's understood in Ayurveda that since that is not the ideal scenario per se, um, it won't be close to perfect for health. The better chance for health, increased perfection of health, as we talked about swasta vritti being established in your own personal health, that's that person's swasta vritta because um, they're a night worker. That's part of their karma.
Right.
This is what they're meant to do. Firemen have to answer that fire call in 1 o'clock in the morning. You know, surgeons have to do surgery at 2 a.m. This is their dharma, and it's understood like there might be some casualties of staying up late and sleeping in the next day and all these things. Yes, we know all these things, and but you do the best that you can in this life that you have within the soul that you have as a purpose of what you're supposed to do in this life. So if that's your purpose, yeah, that's important. So the average person that can wake up in the morning, go through the tides of the day, end the day in that sequence, will have a better chance at health, and there's that axiom in, mid 1900s, early to bed, early to rise makes a good person healthy, wealthy, and wise. But
Hmm.
yeah, of course. So in Ayurveda, you wake up around the sun time, which will change as the season changes. It gets darker earlier, it gets darker later. All these things have to be accommodated for. The body cycle knows, the intelligence knows. So when you're in a clear place, there's no question. You wake up, plus or minus around the 45-minute mark of when the sun rises. You brush your teeth, at least brush your teeth. That's almost like, and that's not even almost, it's a definite. You wake up, you brush your teeth. Very simple. You don't want to brush your teeth after a meal. You don't want to brush your teeth after lunch. Like, no, because you were sleeping and whatever was stagnant in your mouth and you're putting into your mouth, first thing that you're ingesting, you're digesting whatever bacteria and accumulations were in the mouth going into the stomach. No, we want, you know, when we're honoring the deities and the puja, we're cleaning them first before bathing, before we,
Hmm.
bathing them and before we're dressing them and before we're feeding them the honey and like the other things that we feed them. And it's the same concept. If we're divine incarnate and we're following the cycle of the day and nature is the master of all of our beings because nature is all powerful. We can see through the weather patterns
Hmm.
that wake up in the morning, brush your teeth, and then you know, um, you can drink some hot water if that's an indication that's been implied in your own particular regimen for whatever health benefits or not. Then, you do a physical regimen like an exercise that's going to stimulate. Yoga is a good way to start, but it's not considered a true exercise the way, um, going to the gym or weights or cardiovascular stimulation uh, is defined.
Hmm.
But if you start your day with yoga, it's better than not doing nothing in the morning. If you start your day with doing Tai Chi, that's a good way to start the morning. If you can't get it to the gym yet because you haven't gotten it together yet to get to the gym, do some physical movement that gets you out of bed, that gets you to brush your teeth, gives you some sense of like, oh, this is part of my self-care, my well-being. In the morning time, I like to say is it's the basic anchor touchstone foundation for how the rest of the day is going to unfold.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You set the intention, you honor, and of course, you know, for example, like in the morning when I wake up, whether the sun is present or not, I face the northeast direction in my bedroom once I get out of my bed, and I face the direction of the sun, and I close my eyes and I put my hands together and I say a mantra and invoke the intention of the sun and the energy of the day, just to kind of align with the planets and
Mm-hmm.
align with the intelligence and align with that time of day. And then I go and brush my teeth. So then you do this, ideally in a healthy state of digestion, you usually have a bowel movement within a half hour, 45 minutes of waking without
Mm-hmm.
stimulant. This is a good
Mm-hmm.
barometer. Without stimulant, with or without the hot water, definitely without the coffee. So these are basic barometers that we're looking at the cycle of the day. Then we do the exercise because ideally it's best to have bowel movement before exercise, but sometimes some people are a little slow, so the exercise moves the bowel movement. That's okay too. It's not worst case scenario. Then after the exercising, then ideally we would do some sort of self-reflection, some meditation, some inwardness, some quietness, some sort of prayers or things like that, stillness, whatever example of that. And then you go and shower. Shower is pretty much definitely indicated because you want to rinse off everything from yesterday. You're letting go of the history of yesterday, symbolically, um, you know, the history we're releasing through pooping, peeing, sweating, bathing. We're letting go
Mm-hmm.
of yesterday. We rinse our teeth, we're letting go of yesterday, you know. Then after you have, if it's indicated, breakfast. And this is all done before 8 a.m., 8:30 latest.
Mm-hmm.
So the earlier you get up, the increased chance you might have for hunger, which can come natural. Some people might need 2 meals a day. Some people might need 3 meals a day. Some people might just need 1 meal a day. Depends on their age, depends on conditions, factors, seasons, all these things get factored in. Um, Ayurveda does not subscribe to the generic 3 meals a day, main meal at lunch, main meal at dinner, main meal at breakfast, drink 8 glasses of water, or half your body weight in ounces. Ayurveda does not subscribe to this because it's not complete, proper consideration per individual. So that's the sort of side note or disclaimer. So then after, you're having the breakfast, then you jump into work. Right now you're prepared with a clear mind, clean body, clear everything, more receptive, more open, and then you go into the work. Then you do the work, whether it's home, whether it's in the office. Um, then, you make it to lunch, and then you have lunch around, 12, 1, depending. Not later than 2. 3 o'clock is no longer proper lunch for the biology, for the physiology, for the doshas, things like that. There's no excuse. You cannot work during lunchtime. You should not be working during lunchtime. If you have hunger, you should follow hunger cue. If you have thirst, you should follow thirst cue, right? The
Mm-hmm.
body is subtle in some ways and will drop these cues. If you're like, oh, I have no time for this, if you don't make time for good health, disease will make good time for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then you progress through the day and you're doing your lunch and then you go back to work and then you're winding down the day. And then, you wrap up and you come home and then you have your meal, between 4 and 7, depending on your work schedule and things like that. No later than 7. If it's after 7, then the meal should be lighter and as per hunger cue, but definitely before bedtime, at least by a couple hours. Right. And then bedtime, ideally, in the ideal world, you should be asleep by 10. Not in bed by 10 and sleeping by 1. Asleep. You get to bed, you fall asleep within 10 minutes. If you don't fall asleep within 10, 15 minutes in Ayurveda, it already indicates that there's an imbalance that's causing sort of like, we'll call it insomnia. It's called
Mm-hmm.
anidrita, which is like causative factor, um, you know, the causative factor of like insomnia, which is like staying up. You can't
Mm-hmm.
fall asleep, So not like you don't want to fall asleep is different. Oh, I want to watch TV. That's not proper insomnia. You can create proper insomnia. But if you're like, oh, yeah, I'm trying to go to sleep, but I can't sleep, that is more insomnia. That's more that's like, oh, you know, it's at that point not choice, right? And then you sleep, and ideally you get your 7, 8 hours sleep, and then you wake up and repeat, and this is every day. And so that's the basic rundown of the cycle of the day. So we have the main points of the day, which are what you do before breakfast, the breakfast point, then the lunch point, then the dinner point, Then, the before dinner point, which is like the unwinding, relaxing, watching things that are non-stimulating, non-aggravating, non-agitating, non-infuriating before bed, so that the mind can have a chance to unpack its whole day's process. Um, to note that if you go to sleep and we have agitated sleep, it's whatever was compressed into the nervous system during the day that's going to unravel in the middle of the sleep. So if you're not unwinding before bed and you're just rushing to bed or you're up, then you're not giving the body time to unwind. So if you want to implement like a nice practice before bed, there's a practice called yoga nidra. You can just do simple meditation for 10 minutes, 5 minutes. If you're not familiar with meditation, start at 2 minutes, find some basic thing, build your way up to 10 minutes, before bed. Try to put the phones and smart devices away from the bed before bed, an hour before bed, ideally, you know. So this sets the tone for proper digestion, proper physiology, proper hunger, proper energy, proper enthusiasm, proper inspiration, proper immunity. Like these are all the things. Like this basic outline of the Dinacharya practice is ideal. And this is within the context of the average person. Um,
Hmm.
if a person that's listening to this podcast is a nurse, then you have to meet with me so we can refine the details and try to figure out some of that. That's you know, we will make the best work for what the best situation is in that moment. But for the person that has a 9 to 5 job or 8 to 4 job, you have more
Hmm.
leeway, more flexibility, more capacity, and a bigger jump start on health and well-being by following these dinacharya practices.
So, Dr. A, there's a few things that are emerging for me. One, the huge quote: "If you don't make time for health, disease will make time for you."
Hmm.
Can I quote you on that?
Sure.
Okay,
Yes.
because I'm about to put that on a big placard and put it up in the kitchen and the bathroom and in every place in my house because
Yes.
that's is absolutely essential. I think as a touch point, as a reminder in this practice. And I also want to say, I think Dinacharya was my first introduction to Ayurveda before I met you. I took a workshop. Um, and I took the workshop with Dr. Baswati Bhattacharya, who
Yeah,
wrote
yeah.
Everyday Ayurveda.
Yes.
And I remember that I felt like, oh, can I do this? This is what I need, right? I could feel into like, oh, my brain very much wants this ritual, this way of approaching the day as sacred. What I'm really feeling into is how every moment is sacred and how our bodies, right, as you mentioned, I was like, oh yes, my body is not only a temple, right, that may sound like trite or cliche, it is
Hmm.
absolutely true. And so what it means to make offerings in this way to our bodies in this practice is really landing for me.
Hmm.
Um, and then, of course, I'm going to come with, right, the larger cultural questions, systemic questions. And when I think about like when Chataka and when the Vedas shared this information, right, in ancient time, um, and even in more modern times, there is a communal approach to making sure that everybody can adhere to these practices. And so I'm thinking about being a new mother and like getting up and then trying to follow this routine. And obviously, we know like there's different circumstances that happen in life. And I'm just thinking about how sort of this way that we live in a very individual focused way might prevent us from engaging in these practices because so much of life is about just making it. And so I'm curious about how we can um acknowledge that there are these other extenuating circumstances that might keep us from these practices? And like, what are the small ways we can just start?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you look at the basic template of what they suggest, at any given point that should be done, it's like start picking one of the pieces because they're all connected. So you start picking one of the pieces to start integrating it um, over time because, these things aren't taught in school,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And in most cultures, most places around the world, people don't know these things. Um, like Mediterranean culture, of course, it's almost like a no-brainer. You wake up, you have a light breakfast, you're walking 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 steps a day, you have meal at the proper meal time, you have dinner is sometimes a little tricky because they like to have,
Late.
and yeah, and that's, so in Ayurveda, we could say like we take the templates in general, we make the adjustments to meet what Ayurveda has created as like the understanding of properness, and then you apply intelligence and go, oh, this is what needs to be corrected. But also, it's like if you want to reverse engineer it, you think, well, what do look up any culture, any country, what are the common health ailments? And in Ayurveda, we
Hmm.
can connect a lot of this. And in a lot of the podcasts that we've done together, it's been emphasized Ahar and Bihar are the causes of health or disease, depending on which side of the coin you're on. And pretty much all Ayurvedic physicians will always do like a basic talk on like dinacharya. And it's not
Hmm.
just like, yeah, yeah, brush your teeth and no, because ahar, is food, vihar is lifestyle. Lifestyle and vihar are interwoven together. So am I eating at the
Hmm.
proper meal times? That's the ahar piece. And also ahar is like what am I taking in, right?
Yes.
And then the vihara is like, what is the sequence, the structure, the format? And the dinacharya understanding is there's a format to be followed. So you extract what, you first observe what you're deficit in, then you see like what needs to be corrected, and you do one thing at a time because it takes time because it took you time to get out of that place if you're unless you're already out of that to begin with. I've when I
Hmm.
used to do case management and social work in another lifetime, I would watch like the children's pattern would follow the parents' patterns, of course. And, in order for the children to be corrected, the parents had to correct their own patterns first and recreate the programming. And that can happen more easily with kids because they're more adaptable in general. And so that little bit of integration is a reprogram that can benefit them in the long term so they can avoid, some people don't want to go to Western medicine or any kind of medicine. Well, then you do these little things. And so it doesn't matter if you're a pregnant mom or if you're a nurse, like you start implementing what you can based on the understanding of what's there and applying it to your life. And slow and steady wins the race.
Yes.
And you have to just integrate it and you have to have this mindfulness of it because it's the opposite, right? So generic and commonsense is this understanding of like increases like. Well, if I keep staying up late, if I keep overeating, if I keep eating at the
Hmm.
wrong time, if I don't exercise at the right time, um, then if I keep doing that, things are going to increase. So the opposite, the reduction, is the cure or is the reversal of that condition. So if you're like, well, I have heart disease, thyroid issues, neurological that issues, pregnancy issues, digestive issues, then Ayurveda knows it is something in your diet and your lifestyle that started as the ball rolling that that snowball became an avalanche.
That's right.
And you didn't just wake up to an avalanche.
No, you
You
were
know,
practicing building,
yes.
right? I think that's what's also really important that's landing for me are these like fractal practices. And I know it's funny, you and I were talking about poop before we got on here because we talk about poop quite
Yes.
often. And and I was sharing with my daughter, we were talking about her digestion and then she was asking me about my digestion because those are the conversations and she was asking me about constipation
Mhm.
and I said, I really pay a lot of attention to my poop. And I wanted her to know that paying attention to your poop and noticing how it changes and the consistency is not something that we don't have to talk about or that we shouldn't talk about. I said, let's talk about poop. Now,
Mhm.
she's leaving the stage of poop jokes, at least for
Mhm.
now. But I think what was really resonating for me was us having this practice of paying attention to the consistency of our bowels and talking about it and noticing what are the patterns that we can glean from the poop.
Mhm.
And so she said, "Oh, okay, mommy. Well, then, yeah, I want to tell you." So she gives me a report, an update on her poop. I give her a report, an update on my poop. And this morning, I can say I was very proud of myself, actually, when we were talking about this, that I had a lovely poop before I even brushed my teeth. So,
Mhm. That's good.
right, I
Yeah.
needed no stimulation. And I literally sat there and I was like, oh, I think I'm doing okay today. That was a sign. That
Yes.
was a sign
Yeah.
because I pay attention. And I know there when I wake up and it's not there, or when I wake up and I'm feeling sluggish, and I'll notice and then I'll question, oh, what was the consistency?
Mhm.
Um, that is giving me so much information, just so much information right there. And I think that without, right, this regimen that I know I practice, but also can be all over the place. And my poop will tell me when I'm all over the place. My poop will tell
Mhm.
me when I'm out of alignment.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just wanted to kind of share that poop story with you,
Mhm.
and to thank you for expanding my awareness of the intelligence of poop. I also want to come back to we
It's
will
like
have.
talk. Let's talk about poop, but let's not talk crap.
Yeah. We're not shit talkers. We just like to talk about elimination.
Yeah. I'll- and don't be a poopy mouth. Yeah, no, these are all the things that are very informative, right? Because it's like the body's always communicating to us, and we hope that it doesn't communicate when it screams with ailments, right?
Yes,
But if we know how to slow down and pay attention to the little things, it's the little things that accumulate into the big things, right?
that's
And
right.
that's for the positive or the negative, for the good health or for the negative health. It's like the little things become the big things, right? And I'm talking about, because in Ayurveda, there's, endogenous causes and exogenous causes, or Agantujani and Ninja causes. So it's knowing like, if it's exogenous, if it's external, if it's Agantuja, then that means obviously something outside afflicted me. I got stung by a scorpion, or I got hit by a car, or like a brick fell out, then that's, that is an external cause, and that's something that requires some other further investigation through Ayurvedic lens. If it's a ninja cause, then it's like internal. And this is where we're looking at the doshas and how they're responding to each time of the day, each time of the year, each time of the life. Because these doshas are sort of like, kind of moving through time and space and reactive to the environment. So dinacharya helps to keep them in a more remediated state. And dinacharya also lends itself to ritacharya, which we've talked about at the junctions of the
Hmm.
seasons. And so it's the foundation for all days, all times of the year. Ritacharya is just very more specific to like you adjust to the practice of the seasonal change where you're not wearing shorts in November because it's inappropriate, right? You transition from summer to fall and you put fall clothes on. You transition from winter to spring and clothing can change and like what you're wearing and all these things change. These are following like the seasonal things plus the cleansing that gets done, the purification, the panchakarmas and things like that during the seasons.
Hmm.
But it all starts with the dinacharya, what you're doing every day, and it's the little things. And so, in Ayurveda, whenever we do an assessment, we're always asking all these basic things like how are you pooping? How are you peeing? How are you
Hmm.
menstruating? And all the qualities and the textures and the smells. Like this gives us so much information. And then, the physical exam and just the questioning itself, how the person's questioning, like all the little things are getting noted down very fast. And
Hmm.
And for ourselves in Ayurveda, it's like as a recipient of Ayurvedic medicine, it increases awareness so that we can have a relationship with ourselves in our day to day, knowing, I overate for dinner last night, and my poop is a little slower this morning. Okay. So how's my hunger? It's not that hungry. Okay, I will be fasting this morning. I'll have a cup of tea and then I'll wait till lunch when I've already moved my stool and have a proper increased appetite. Okay. Like you have to slow down, not like, oh, well, I don't know what I'm going to eat today because it's a busy day and I have 15 hours of conference. I just stuffed something down at 7 a.m. No, this is the failure of intelligence. This is the
Hmm.
prajnaparada, which is like, no, you don't just stuff it down to kind of put it there for later. That's not how it works.
That's another joke, my daughter. Well, it's not a joke, but I think when you're saying that, um, there's something to it. You know, my daughter even said last night, "Well, mommy, if I get all my poop out, then I'll be hungry." And I said, "It's okay if you're hungry. It's not time to eat. It's time for you to go to bed. And yes, you need to eliminate." And so there was something for her in her mind, like, I got to keep some of this in here to sustain me.
Yeah.
And while she's 6, I do believe that there is like that kind of thinking does carry on in other
Yeah.
ways and is not absurd.
Yeah.
Right?
No, and a lot of people think that way. People are like, "Oh, I have a lunch meeting from 11 to 3, so I need to eat at 2." I'm like, "Are you hungry at 2?" No, but I put it in there. I'm like,
I put it in there.
"No, like you have to." And that rare occasion that that random meeting happens during that time, it's unfortunate, but the thing is, if you're mostly doing all the things most of the time, and we'll say like 60 to 80%, then the other, 20 to 40%, when life is kind of doing its thing, you've been sustained by this anchor long enough that you can afford that little bit of a bump. Like
Hmm.
you've created the foundation for your health. It says it's the converse of that, that when people are living like that all the time, you can't have an erratic lifestyle and expect good health. You can't. It's
Right.
just not, it's not, and people have to travel, and people travel a lot for work, and people are always on the go for this and that and the other thing. Yes, this on the go-ness is the thing that expedites the aging process and degeneration process much quicker because this is the
Hmm.
Vata energy and
Hmm.
Vata accelerates. Vata can be the gentle breeze that blows the leaf off the branch, or it can turn into a tornado and rip down towns.
Hmm.
And so this is the momentum of the doshas that is undeniable. So from the Ayurvedic lens, we perceive this and we can see cause and effect. So a person that has a radical lifestyle, I had a woman that was 36 years old many years ago, like 10, 15 years ago. She came to see me. She's like, I'm 36. I have no menses for the past year. I'm like, what do you do for work? I travel a lot, travel to different countries, different time zones. And I said, yes, your job is stopping your menses, causing it to be amenorrhea.
Hmm.
She's like, well, I can't give up my job. I'm like, I know, right? So we had to put some other things in place. And I said, when you crash land here, this is what we need to do. When you're in different countries, here are certain medicines to take in different countries to take different medicines because you're accounting for time zone change and all these things and so then if she eventually started getting some of her menses back. It wasn't perfect, but
Hmm.
the lifestyle was not perfect, you know. And she was 36. So she was
Yes,
like, "Oh, I haven't had menses for almost a year." I'm like, "Well, that's menopause at 36. That's not normal."
that's right.
Right. But the lifestyle was not normal. Right. So people have to really factor in like the body doesn't lie. So if you're getting symptoms, what is it that you're doing that's contributing towards that? Because it is. We're always doing something. All of us. We're all guilty.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think something you mentioned though also about the doshas, if we can come back to that, and specifically as we think about the doshas throughout the day, could you like share more about that? How that and just especially in refreshing folks who,
Yeah.
because we haven't talked about the doshas
Yeah,
in
there's
this
some
way
there's some fun images
in a
out there
while.
about the Ayurvedic clock, which is very nice. I've seen some really elaborate models where they're very pretty. You know, so the general understanding is from 6 to 10 a.m. is the kapha time of day. From 10 a.m. to 2 is pitta time of day. From 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is vata time of day. From 6 p.m. To 10 p.m. is kapha time of day. From 10 p.m. to 2 p.m. 2 a.m. is Pitta time of day, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. is Vata time of day. So we have the doshas swapping out every few hours. And um, if the doshas that are present in a person's body will be like a little bit in surplus, then it's during those times of day that correspond to that that will show the increase of that also. So again,
Mm-hmm.
this whole idea of, like increases like, right? It's like, oh, if I am more kapha, then it's common that during kapha time of day, whether it's AM or PM, I'm going to have a little bit more kapha. You know,
Yes.
so this generic concomitance is like, yeah, well, of course, if I'm a kapha predominant person and I'm staying in bed, so if we're supposed to be up ideally, we'll say generally within 45 minutes of the sun, we'll say it's around 6 a.m. And I decide to
Mm-hmm.
sleep in till 7, 8, 9, 10, kapha increases for everybody, but
Mm-hmm.
especially in people that are more kapha predominant. So staying in bed during kapha time of morning, you feel heavier when you get out of bed, of course, because you're
Yes.
increasing the physiological matter that relates to kapha, the lymph, the density of the water, the fluids, the heaviness increases because kapha is
Yes.
heavy in quality. So this
Can I pause
latest,
you for a second?
yes,
This is huge for me.
yeah,
You know this, but I want to speak this to people who need to hear, like from a real person in their real body who has some kapha predominant
yeah,
experiences, that when I am struggling to get up, it is counterintuitive. I'm like, nope, I just need more sleep. I just need more sleep. And I actually do end up feeling more sluggish. I have a harder time reorienting. And I'll notice that when I push myself to get up and I think, oh gosh, this is gonna hurt. It right, like I'm so tired. It in fact I actually am almost always surprised as to how I am able to activate and have that energy,
hmm
that I thought if I could just lay here under the bed, not even on the bed, but under the bed, I would feel better. And it is the exact opposite.
yeah,
My brain fog that I think won't clears, right? Like this, and it's not automatic, it's not all the time, but I do want to speak to my very clear, very real experience with this.
hmm No, it's true. And I mean, and just to also preface, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, I think it was the last one, like the basic conditions in which daytime sleep is required or indicated. And, you know, we're not talking about that here, no specific indications, whether, if you're sick in the morning, then of course you sleep till you feel like you can get up. That's different.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
you're in a normal range of healthy state, without these other specific conditions that say like, oh, you can have daytime sleep, because technically that's called daytime sleep. Sleeping in the
Mm-hmm.
morning is daytime sleep because it's daytime. Um, then it applies to that person that is sleeping past 6 or 7 a.m. The longer you stay in bed, the heavier you will feel. If you're more Vata Pitta predominant, you might feel like it's not the worst for you because you don't have as much kapha element in your body, so you kind of benefit from that little bit of kapha contributing. But again,
Mm-hmm.
then you have to be careful because again, if you sleep in later, that can start thwarting your hunger cue. So then you're not eating breakfast, and then lunch is kind of thrown off because you're like, well, now I need to eat at 10 versus at 11, which changes when I eat breakfast, when I eat dinner. So you have
Mm-hmm.
to, it's all connected and it's strategic, and the body's intelligence is there. So you have to know what predominant elements are present in you that's requiring certain things of you that's specific. But the general Ayurvedic clock is this. It's like
Mm-hmm.
kapha pitta vata, daytime, nighttime, and each person's moving through the day. Just like the different seasons are predominant with the different elements. So we have more
Mm-hmm.
vata in the winter, and we have more kapha in the spring, and we have more pitta in the summer. So. Uh, I have some patients that are pitta predominant with some pitta predominant health concerns, and their appetite is more ravenous this time of year. And
Mm-hmm.
normally, within a general healthy range of digestion and health and constitutions and all these things, appetite does decrease a little bit in the summertime. And we've talked
Yeah.
about like the Dakshinayana and you know um the times of year, the different like
Hmm.
sun rising, sun setting, the solstices, like these imply certain levels of, like you're hungrier in the winter and less in the summertime. That's a
Hmm.
normal, you know, that's a normal like progression. So if you're like, yeah, I'm not so hungry when it's hot out, yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm.
But if I'm so hungry when it's hot out, then that already tells me how much pitta and vata's in your system, right?
Mm.
And then we have
Hmm.
to put medicines in place to kind of like temper that because then when you go into the vata season, you're gonna just skyrocket out. Right. So
Yes.
everything, and you're what we're watching in Ayurveda, the doshas and what their dance is through the season. So if you're like, oh yeah, I get pretty hot in the summer, but as this transition happens from September, October, and it gets fall, yeah, the heat dissipates and now I feel more cozy and warm. Yeah, this is good. That means you're more in that sort of prashamana stage where it's like, accumulation, aggravation, alleviation. You should be alleviating with the transition of the season, that whatever symptoms might be predominant subside with the nature changing its season. That's a good sign. If you're like, oh, I'm more hot, I'm breaking out now, and it's fall, then that means you didn't discard the pitta properly, and then now it's gone deeper, and so now it's manifesting out of its season. It's out of its timeline, right? So we look at so many different things. It's like, oh yeah, I get this particular skin rash in this winter, but in the spring it goes away. Well, then of course, this is more about the predominant skin, and kapha comes in,
Hmm.
and it's pacified by kapha. Like, so we're looking at like these kind of things as cause and effect, karanakarya. So this generic concomitance, gives way to this, to the variant factors in their reduction. So if the next quality that comes in, it's like if I feel hot and I go in the air conditioner, I feel cool, right? Or I drink coconut water, I feel cool. Like the opposite is if I'm like hot and I'm eating Tabasco sauce, I know some countries do that to induce sweating, which produces a cooling effect. If that's natural to
Hmm.
culture, then that makes kind of sense. But if you have gastritis when you're doing that in the middle of 105 degrees, then it's not the medicine anymore.
No, no. I'm I am also curious about, when uh so for me, I know, Vata time in the afternoon from 2 to 6. At 2 o'clock, I usually hit a wall. Like I think at 2 o'clock, I'm usually like, oh, I'm a little tired. But then I catch a second wind at around 3:30, 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock, I usually have like all of this energy. My brain turns back on. It's almost like morning again for me. Um, can you talk a little bit about these like shifts in energy?
You
And
said what time does the energy shift for you?
my energy usually shifts. Like I start to feel tired probably around between like 1 and 2.
Hmm.
I'm like,
Yeah.
and so this is between Pitta and Vata time, like the transition. And then probably around 3, between 3 and 6, I'm like, and actually I'd say between 3 and 7. Um, Hello, I'm back.
Yeah.
And I have more brain power. And I think about how, I really try to work more with my natural body rhythms. Now, I work for myself. So if I need to go do yoga nidra at 1:30, from
Hmm.
1:30 to 2 o'clock, I can do that, right? And I know I need to. I know that my brain needs to rest. I know I need to go outside and go for a walk at a certain time. I know that my brain is not going to work just because it is time to work.
Hmm.
It is not on anybody's production line clock. And I think most of our brains are not naturally on someone's production line clock.
Hmm.
And yet we are constantly working against them. So I'm just curious about, yeah, do you have any thoughts about that? I think, especially for people who are trying to align their lives, whether it be their work, their family care, their roles and responsibilities with their natural rhythms and the Ayurvedic clock.
Yeah, I mean, so your initial question about talk more about when that energy comes in for you around three versus like
Yeah.
the two spot. Yeah, because Pitta is transitioning to Vata, but it's also like when was your last meal? What was your last meal considered or consisting of? How far along in digestion did that occur? Because once the digestive system has been satiated by metabolism of the certain meal at the first stage or second stage or third stage, because there's three stages of digestion, that will lend itself to like why she has more sleepiness or why she has more lowness and then more highness after a certain point. So someone that's responding to what time you had lunch, what you had for lunch, how much of a gap from lunchtime to what time of day it is aligned with this clock. So that's what you can look at to see like what are the um, variables that created this potential like, oh, now 3 o'clock I'm more awake, because it could be like your body metabolized the food, or it could be like it's if there's a deficit, then the body's going to use its own resources to try to stimulate its own energy because it doesn't want to be tired, except for like when it's time of day to go to sleep, or in the
Mm-hmm.
day you start to wind down. As far as people aligning with the Ayurvedic clock, yeah, again, it's like the Ayurvedic clock is aligned with Dinacharya. Dinacharya aligns with the Ayurvedic clock, and so picking the fragments that you can make work for you. If you can't make all them work for you because just the lifestyle is what it is, the nanny has to leave at 2, but you need her till 4, but you have to work. And then, you know, again, karma, dharma, choices, you have to surrender the possibility of 100%. There's no such thing as 100% perfect health anyways. Health is dynamic, not static, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the choices that you make that help you align with as much of these principles as much as possible give you a better reserve, better chances, to kind of like increase and change the pendulum in the direction of your favor, so it's never just like you just have to do this, right? Because it's all
Mm-hmm.
dependent. If you get proper sleep, which is like from 10 to 6, then you'll have proper energy more than likely for the daytime's activities, you
Right.
know, and that includes like what your metabolism is going to be like. Because if you're staying up late, you're throwing off your metabolism. If you're staying up late, you're throwing off your thyroid. If you're staying up late, you're creating deficits in other places that will catch up later in time,
Mm-hmm.
because we cannot escape time. Kala is Kali. Kali takes everything. Kala is time, and time is parinam. Parinam is one of the three causes of disease, and it's like linear. So it's like if you stay up late enough, then of course you're going to create a deficit. If you smoked cigarettes for like 6 years, you have to wait at least 6 months to be clear of cigarettes to start getting the body to reprogram properly all the
Mm-hmm.
negative effects. Well, there were 6 years of smoking, 6 months, like it takes time.
That's
And
right.
you can't just be like, well, for the past 6 months I gave up cigarettes and I'm eating, lots of vegetable salads and all these things. That's great. You're just starting. You cannot expect that I should be perfect now with my health, or we'll say 80%. No, because you've been doing these other things that weren't the best for so long. You have to give time, and you then replace that program, that samskara, that history of that sort of like process of like previous tendencies, with time. The new program has to set in, and then you can say like, oh yeah, I steered clear of that glacier in the ocean,
Yes.
because or you collided with that glacier in the ocean and then you realize like, now I need to change my lifestyle, because a lot of people at that point wait till the brink point of destruction where they're like, I have cancer, I have fibroids, I have no menstrual, and I'm 40, or like all these things. We wait for the X marks the spot kind of thing to say like, maybe I need to start changing things. But now you're 40 or 50 deciding this. You just spent 50 years doing all the things you weren't supposed to that got you to this point where now I have disease. And the thing is, like, some people say, my great Aunt Tilly, had her shots of whiskey every day and smoked cigarettes till she died, and she was 96. Yeah, you can't compare. Great Antilles was born in a different era, a different food, different air quality, different water quality, different soil quality. The genetics of her parents were, maybe not as like stressed by certain things, that gave her that fortitude. But if you were born after 1960 and you have exposure to like preserved foods and, boxed foods and canned foods and irradiated foods, yeah, you're not going to be a great Antilles.
Mm-hmm.
Great Antilles is still eating after 1960, but she already has such a strong cellular foundation that she's not going to be as affected by those things, most likely. So you can't say you're great Antilles unless you were born in 1855. You know, you
Yes.
you have a good better chance if your mom has that. You inherit some of those things, but we also can't take for granted,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the thing is, you don't know what's going to happen in time until time presents itself.
So
It's
that
not like,
part.
oh, I ate healthy for 50, 60 years and over a sudden at 65, I started having whatever. No, no. It didn't just come out of nowhere. It was the slow little signs over time that we neglect, that we don't pay attention to. We take a Tums for this, and we take a Robitussin for that. We take a Tylenol for this, and we take a Advil for that. And, you know, we were putting Band-Aids on top of Band-Aids, but eventually it breaks.
So let's talk about, as we close out, um, what would you recommend, right, uh, for us considering, yeah, taking on this practice, or what feels like a closing thought that you have, as we look to making our bodies sacred and in knowing that they always have been. I think this feels like the right invitation, for me as I consider my practice, right? Rather than, oh, I'm on this diet, or this is this new regimen that I have to implement in this
Mhm.
way, in order to prevent, I should say, disease. Um, so yeah, I'm curious, what closing thoughts do you have?
Yeah, I mean, so Ayurveda is the path of consciousness, and so there's no um it's more about disabling a pre-existing construct or program and enabling a new one. Not enabling the person to coexist with their previous patterns that weren't the most ideal and trying to just kind of like, have your cake and eat it too. You have to consider like where you're at in health in the present moment, self-evaluate historically, reflecting on what factors could have contributed to what gave you or has given you what you have today, whether you have good health or not good health, right?
Hmm.
You have to look at those things and then also look at, you know, from the template of the Ayurvedic clock, we'll say, like, where are you on the spectrum of like how aligned you are with the different parts of the day,
Mm.
right? And if there are certain things that are deficits and you're seeing like, okay, I stay up late, but I still kind of get around 6. Okay, but yeah, what health issues do you have and don't have because of this, um, and start making some changes to see how that will help. Now, of course, if these are new conditions that started within 6 months or less than a year, sometimes just by remediating the diet and lifestyle, you don't even need medicines and all these kind of things. But usually after that, medicines are required because those are
Mhm.
the things that will go deeper into the
Mhm.
tissues more than just exercise. Exercise is, of course, important. So, you know, notice what's missing, notice what you have, and notice maybe the thing that you're missing might have the chance of helping reduce what you have,
Aha.
and notice what you're doing that might be contributing the generic concomitants, the increase, like increases like, then the reduction factor is the resolve. So play with that. What's increasing? I have chest congestion and mucus and heaviness and depression, but I sleep in more in the morning and it's slower to start the day. Then that's where you start.
Mhm.
And I know depression's a whole different thing. Mental states are a different thing. We can talk about some other point. I know people that suffer with depression, like it's not as easy to be like, well, just make yourself get up.
Mhm.
Yeah, of course. 20 years ago or 10 years ago or however long before the depression started, if you started this proper pattern, you're least likely to fall into that pattern of like, now I can't get up.
Mhm.
Versus like, I don't want to get up. I don't like it. My bed's too cozy. It's 10 o'clock. I should sleep in more. Like, no, no. Like if it goes from a want to like a need.
Yes. I want to say, as a transformational coach, as a um someone who is really focused on the invitation to practice, that this has been one of the most transformational lessons for me personally, and also what I am always sharing with people in the world. Every day we get to start again and try again. And these very specific practices um, can and do lead to change. And so I am really excited because I just made a circle around my deficit area and I changed it because I think I go through this cycle of, is it my sleep? Is it my sleep or is it my morning routine? And then I try to focus on both. And now I'm very clear that I'm going to start with my morning and focus on this fractal practice in the morning. I have a
Mhm.
tiger in here who has shown up, and
Oh,
so so
she's so cute.
I'm gonna
It's
close
it's
out.
11:15. She might need to
Yes,
eat because it's pit the time of day to have lunch now.
that's exactly what it is. So we're gonna close out because she doesn't join this show yet.
Not
But
yet.
um, and so I hope that you continue to be well. And I will see you next month. We will see you next month. As always, you can find Dr. A at stillpointayurveda.com. Check out his recipes too, y'all. I have to always remember how resourceful this website is. And also, Dr. A, you do telehealth.
Yes,
Yes.
I can see
Okay.
anyone in the world. And then
That's
besides the
right.
recipes, there's a tab that's the health tidbits, and there's a running um, article that I've written that has 17 points that talk about the Ritacharya, Dinacharya pieces that also
Hmm.
show up in my newsletter every month. Like, here's the thing. So if you want to get more clear on like specific practices of the day, that's a place to go to on my website. Look at my website, and I look forward to having new people because it's always an adventure. So thank you all for having me.
Yes. Yes. Well, we will see you next month and be well.
Do you well. Namaste.